welcome to Midnight Cry. My name's Terry Baldwin, I'll be your host. We have with us as a guest today, Dr. Daniel Shayesteh. He comes from another culture originally and another religion, which was Islam, but now resides in his belief system in Christianity. He has a very interesting story and we welcome him today to our studio. Thank you, Daniel, for coming today.
So good to be with you, Terry.
Now, as a start, I think you could just tell us something about your life, about your growing up in Iran. You were born in Iran. Can you tell us about your life in Iran and what you would have learned about Islam in Iran when you grew up as a young child?
I was born in a Muslim family, as you mentioned. My father had 2 wives, 12 children. They were all living together. My parents found me a smart boy in the school, clever, and they thought they should invest in my life and help me to learn religious thing. And they put me into the course for memorizing Quran, and I grew very rapidly in that. At the age of 9, I became a famous boy, able to recite the Quran and able to go to different religious ceremonies and to function some Islamic rituals. And we learned from childhood that Islam was the best religion and perfect religion. Islam should rule all over the world. Other religions are imperfect, and especially Islam has come to perfect the religion of Jews and Christians. And
now, when you say you learned this, you're talking about from your parents, from your teachers, from the mosque, from society.
Absolutely.
It's coming from everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah, it's everywhere. Parents were not that much practicing Muslims, but when they put me really to practice Muslim, so I had to get involved with going to mosque and listening to other leaders, listening, to preachings, and so that they were the real source for us to learn from them what Islam is and why Islam should dominate over all other religions.
Now, this is an interesting point, other religions. I've spoken to many Muslims over the years, and I noticed they've all been taught about Christianity. They've all been told something. In fact, they've been told quite a lot, I've found. So in your life, what did you learn about Christianity, and who taught you this? What was told to you? What was your concept of Christianity at that time in your childhood?
Mainly the information is coming from mosques and mosque leaders, and the day you are, in the mosque and you're learning there, you're hearing from them, and also it's a generational, message. Forefathers have learned, and so they just transfer that from a generation to other. We learned that Christianity is the religion of slave trading white people. It's a corrupt religion, doesn't have a sound doctrine for moral, and it hasn't power to establish a good ethic, and that makes the society so corrupt. So that's why Islam should dominate all other religions.
So you wouldn't get a mixed message, like you wouldn't get some of the religious teachers, for instance, or peers telling you good things about Christianity? Like, was it, generally speaking, was it mostly negative?
Absolutely. We didn't hear. But I tell you, I heard from my father and from his friends and from other people, they knew that Christians were good people. They never
So
thought,
they would admit this?
Absolutely.
Would say it sometimes?
They never thought why they were good. They didn't know that goodness was coming from their belief, and they were good people. They knew that, and still many Muslims believe that Christians are people, trustworthy people, and we can trust them. But just its message is a baseless message, just spread among Muslims that Christianity is corrupt and Islam should dominate.
Now, would you say this would just be mainly unique to your life or to the area that you grew up? Or would you say, generally speaking, in Iran, this is what young children would have been exposed to when they were growing up?
It's general. It's not only in Iran. I have been in, Turkey. I have visited many people from many other Muslim nations. It's a general thing that you learn from that. If nowadays you go to website, you can hear from many places that from many nations they say, yeah, Jews are pigs, Christians are donkey and monkey. They just say that.
Yeah, I've actually heard this from other people that grew up in Islamic societies, but it's just interesting to hear it again, to ask that question again.
Yeah,
now,
absolutely.
Iran, 1979 was the revolution with Ayatollah Khomeini. Now, some of the people viewing this might be too young to remember watching any of this news, but I certainly watched this news when I was a younger guy on the television and seeing the visuals of what was happening in Iran, although I didn't understand it at the time. What was life like in Iran before 1979, prior to this revolution that took place there?
Well, I wish we knew what was going to happen after the revolution. Compared to the situation now, you can call the life in Iran before revolution very good. Iran like a paradise, really, compared to the present situation. There were, to some extent, social freedom, but unfortunately, political freedom was missing there. You were not able to criticize any person in power, and especially the king of Iran. But we were seeing that Iran was heading toward Western life, trying, to help people to get some glimpse of life from the West.
Yeah, from what I've read, the picture that I get, it seems to have been a place prior to 1979 that was going ahead in many respects, but had big problems because, the regime there was quite violent at times to people that disagree with them. Would this be accurate to say that?
Absolutely, yeah.
But education-wise, I've spoken to many Iranians, and they all give me the same picture, that education was highly valued, and families would make it a big thing in their family to make sure that their children got a good education, not just an Islamic education either. That they were getting science and mathematics and history, etc., was quite valued, wasn't it?
Absolutely. You say education is really an identity for Iranian life. Iran itself was a center of education. Competing with the West, Roman Empire and Greek Empire. So Iran had established really strongly in that area. Even after a few centuries after the occupation of Islam, Muslims were not still yet that much powerful to, extinguish that flame of education in Iran. And Iranians still in that time were able to compare religions and philosophies. But that continued. We have great people from Iran like Khayyam, like Maulana Rumi. They were outspoken people, and they always spoke about different values. And even you see Maulana was able, he's a 13th century poet, he was able even to criticize Iran. So Iranians were still really attaching themselves strongly to their national identity in the time of Shah. The real message really in that time for Iranians were that God, Shah, and the country. So they were saying, we love our country and we love the kingdom in this country, because kingdom is just their identity, goes for thousands of years. And so that was helping them to open themselves more to other ideas.
Yeah, I've thought about this when I've spoken to people. I mean, even the language, the fact that the Iranians kept their language and didn't change over to Arabic really speaks volumes, doesn't it? I mean, there was a lot of pressure from what I've read in the history there of Islam coming into Iran or into Persia, and whereas other nations succumbed and eventually Arabic became their language, their first language, Iran held out.
Absolutely.
For 1400 years, held out and is still held out.
Yeah, even Iran was one of those difficult countries to occupy. You see, Iran took 15 years for Arabs to come and occupy. It was not easy for them, easy over, and many people gave their lives. We have got a famous person, his name is Babak. Every Iranian, even though he is not Muslim, millions of people celebrate his day, and they are very proud of him. They stood against Islamic, armies. So that's their identity. They never wanted to lose their identity. Actually, that identity still is working. You see, every year there are hundreds of students are protesting in the streets. They say, we don't want Islamic, Sharia law in this country. We want our ancient values. We want, the values of Cyrus and Darius in this country.
Yeah, now that brings us to another point. Now you personally got involved in a very serious way in the revolution against the Shah, leading up to 1979, and then during the revolution and after the revolution. Why? What?
See, there were several reasons. One of the reasons was this, that Shah was trying to give freedom to people. But unfortunately, he was not a strong leader to teach them how to use freedom. Unfortunately, Islam has taught people in a way that if they get freedom, that they don't know how to use that freedom, and eventually they end up killing the person who gives them freedom. So that was one reason. That shows, it speaks volumes that we had to some extent freedom to do something. The second major thing really for us to get involved in the revolution and become so radical against the Shah.
How old were you, by the way, when you started this involvement?
I was around 21 years old in the university. Many students in the universities came from, different cities and especially countryside. They were not economically strong. They were suffering. I was suffering really economically. Coming from a poor family, my family was not able to support me. I was not able to live in a big city like Tehran that needs a lot of money for you to afford your life. And therefore, I became poor really. I was a very clever student, loved really to study, but unable to continue my study. And one day even I was homeless. I slept under the bridge, and some of my classmates really gave me shelter. That caused me to be angry at the ruling king. Now we are sitting on a huge oil base. Country is a rich country.
That's right. It is still
why
very rich.
Why shouldn't then I have money, to study? I'm a good student. I'm making good success here. So and different things really stirred the student to move forward, but the motivation was not religious at all. Motivation was socio-political, mainly socially. Why we are poor, why people are not getting really anything from the petrol money. However, the ideas also were flowing in. One of the popular ideas was, communism. And therefore, Muslims also, radical Muslims had their plans. Like people like Ayatollah Khomeini and other Ayatollahs and religious people, they are always good really to take advantage of this movement. So they came in also. We had opportunities to evaluate everything. Is communism good for Iran, or is religion good? And so we students, some of us, including myself, studied and compared. Eventually, I became, a religious person. I said, no, communism doesn't make sense. So to be a student and also an opposition and also a religious person, that really pushes you to be radical, because to fight with a dictator, it's not simply through the words. You have to be radical. So we got involved radically in fighting against the king of Iran. But unfortunately, there were some other powers behind that. Like, Jimmy Carter was behind Ayatollah Khomeini and other powers. So they also prepared the ground from other side. And eventually we overcame, and Ayatollah Khomeini came into Iran and became leader and captured the country.
So, draw a picture for us of the contrast before the revolution and now Ayatollah Khomeini comes and the revolution takes place. What was life like in Iran directly after the revolution?
We were shocked, Terry. We couldn't believe that we were deceived very easily. Ayatollah Khomeini had promised us freedom and democracy, and he had promised Iranians to have share in the money of petrol, and he promised quality of life. He even said to people that what is wrong with Iranian people to have a democracy like Western people. But we were shocked after he took over. And
how long did it take before the shock came? They were like, was it immediate or was it months? Or?
It was really 2-3 months. I quite clearly do not remember that. We were shocked really. After a few months, we saw some other clergies really were speaking, something that stirs, war and fighting, and rejecting somebody who was really the real servant, and helping the revolution. So we discovered this, that they are just trying to create opposition and to take advantage of this. And we were shocked that some journalists started to criticize them in a nice way, and they were taken to prison and tortured and lifetime imprisonment and killed. We were shocked. We were terrified that a few months ago we were promised, freedom and democracy. Just after a few months, not only we do not have that freedom, we lost that little bit freedom we had from the time of King.
So
different.
How long did it take though? Okay, you're saying 3 months and you started to notice things that you weren't happy about, but how long did it take before you got to the point, or you and your friends, before you got to the point where you now were in your heart and in your mind opposed to this leadership, Khomeini and his clerics, etc.? This revolution that had started off, that we had great hope for, now you're opposed. How long did that take?
It took a year for us. The reason we waited for a year, because the manipulative silence of Ayatollah Khomeini, the clergies, the Ayatollahs surrounding him, they were trying really to destroy and reject the right of other people, but he was keeping quiet. We thought that his quietness was a fatherly quietness, that very soon he will, rise up and say to his rebellious children, mullahs surrounding him, enough is enough, you have to stop. We haven't done revolution for this. Many Iranians were waiting for Ayatollah to break that silence and to help Iranians. But we waited for him, and it was too late. After a year, the Bani Said, the president, escaped. He was terrorized, and everything fell into their hands.
So at this point, did you have access to the leadership? I mean, not so much to Ayatollah Khomeini himself, but to his team, to the clerics, the religious leaders who were with him in these ideas? Did you have access to them? Could you go and speak to them, make an appointment and turn up at their door and talk about your problems and express your concerns? Could you do that?
In that stage, it was popular. The newspapers are writing that eventually our leader will break his silence. So the first year after the revolution, still newspapers were there, and people who were ahead of me, closer to Ayatollah Khomeini, they were speaking out. And some of them who had power, like, Bani Said, the first president, who was president with 80% of people's vote, still he had power. He was not taken to prison. He was not attacked. So they were speaking out, and we thought they were speaking out for us.
Actually, this is interesting, because the impression that I had, and most people that I've spoken to, the impression that we had is that Ayatollah Khomeini was doing a lot of talking at that early stage, but that wasn't the case. He was being quiet, But this train just kept going. This revolution just...
He was quiet toward the rebellious of these mullahs. He was speaking, he was always speaking. Every day he was speaking against America, against Israel.
Okay. All right.
Trying to direct the minds of people toward Israel and America and prepare them to fight against them.
That part, what did you think about that part though, of his speeches?
I absolutely strongly was in line with him and with other Muslims that Israel had to be destroyed and America, great Satan. But we had a little bit difference with Ayatollah Khomeini, the first president, and his group and myself. We said that we have to look after our people first economically, as Ayatollah had promised before. If Iranians stay poorer and poorer, then they will not be able to fight against America and Israel. So we had to help them economically. But Ayatollah Khomeini was saying that let us pour out our money to Palestinians and Hezbollah, and our first goal is really to destroy Israel, no matter how much it costs the nation.
Now it got to a point, I know from talking to you previously, it got to a point where the same regime that you were for in the beginning, they then persecuted you and people like you. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, what happened after a year when Ayatollah spoke in favor of mullahs, and rather than standing against them, that really upset us. We lost everything almost. We said, wow, we just 100% are losers now. It was just like a death to us. We said we have to do something. We were not able to go and fight a physical fight, but we just tried to do something that would help Iranians. So we decided to start our own political party and hoping to bring back a little bit of freedom we had before.
So in this, once you started to oppose the regime, they didn't like this?
Absolutely. It was a death sentence. Opposing in Islam is a death sentence. We just did that because we had many followers. We thought that our followers would stand behind us, but the terror came in. They just withdrew, and people felt, chose quietness, and eventually we fell in their hands, and they took us to prison, and waiting in the death row. Eventually, by the grace of God, I was able to escape.
I can see that this would have been a time of, for anybody, great soul searching. Now we know that you became a Christian, but at this stage you're you're still very much committed to Islam, the religion of your youth, the religion of your family. But what actually happened to cause you to come to Christ? What was going on in your head at that time?
By the help of some of friends in Iran, I was able to escape the death sentence and also escape from Iran to Turkey. It was in Turkey that the Lord Jesus revealed himself to me in a dream. And after that, I went to an Iranian church, and the story starts from there, that after reading the gospel, I gave my heart to the Lord Jesus.
Daniel, I have to thank you for that. And viewers, we've run out of time. But we've planned to have you again next time to continue where we left off. Thank you very much.
Thank you.